All right, so the next time you arrive in class, you're gonna take your work out of the bag. Again, being very careful. Put your bag to the side and evaluate your piece. So at this point, my piece is at a soft leather hard. It still has some bend to it, but it feels strong enough to hold a few more pieces. So my piece is good to go. The piece that I did just make another piece so you can kind of compare. This piece, when I wiggle the edges, this one doesn't really go anywhere. This one moves very easily. It's still very sticky. This piece is not ready to go. This piece needs to set up. So if you come in and your piece feels like this, what I would recommend doing is really working on refining and smoothing and making it look the way you want it for the next time that you come into class. You can use the paddle to just lightly paddle the edges. Right now I'm just paddling the bottom, so it's not a big deal that it's held in my hand. But if I were to start paddling the sides like that, I would start to change the shape of them. So you always want to support, especially when it's this soft. Once it sets up and it's a little bit harder, you don't change the shape as much, but support is always good so that you don't make your piece go in or make your piece sort of flare out, which this one, as I was bending it to show you guys, I flared it out a little bit. That's all right, I can fix that. So I'm just gonna move that one to the side. So being that this piece did have a chance to set up, I wanna make sure that before I add on my next coil, I am going to slip. I'm gonna score aggressively and add more slip than I might if the piece was still really wet. This clay that I'm using is wet. This clay is leather hard, so I need to make sure that I get them to kind of match in the amount of moisture that each one has. So that's why you score and you slip so aggressively. So to start your coil again, you want to squish it out in your hand so that it's already into a log shape. And when you're squishing, you want to squish in a way that makes it even so that you don't make one side really skinny and the other one really fat, because that's going to make, probably that will carry out as you start to roll out your coil. So I'm just going to roll this coil out. Once it's big enough for both of my hands to fit on it, I roll with both of my hands. When I'm rolling, I roll from the center and then I start to roll my hands out to the sides. Even if I'm doing one-handed rolling, I still roll out to the sides. I don't keep my hands stationary in one position. If you keep it stationary and just keep rolling back and forth on one spot, you start to get little thin areas and then you get weak spots in your walls. So doesn't matter if your coil is an oval or a little bit more square, as long as it's even. You're really going for even. So again, if I refer back to my template, I can see that I still need to belly out some more. And if I hold this piece of my template up to it, I see that I really need to start moving, I need to continue moving my piece out. So I'm going to score this piece a little bit more aggressively than I would if it was really soft, adding slip to it as well. Don't make it so wet that when you go to smooth on your next piece, it's sliding all around. But you definitely want to have some slip in all of the grooves. I'm going to slip the coil or score the coil that I have down here as well, and add just a little bit of slip to it. So I want to make my shape start to go out. So I'm going to go again on the edge of that piece so that it starts to continue that outward belly that I'm looking for. So I'm going to compress down. It is really important to make sure that you really compress that piece of clay down so that it's suctioned to there. So that if I tried to lift this up, which I don't recommend, but if I tried to lift it up, it is not going anywhere. So right now this is not compressed down. I can lift that up very easily. So I'm just going to really pinch my fingers, not super hard, but enough so that I'm adding enough pressure. I support from the inside and the outside as I pinch so that Anywhere that I lift up with this coil now, it's not going anywhere. It's on there. So my next step is to smooth out. So this is definitely a little bit more challenging when you're working with the leather hard clay. So you really have to make sure you spend a good amount of time getting this first coil attached. When you attach a soft coil onto a leather hard coil, a lot of times you'll get like a little bit of a ridge that will form where you can see where the two pieces have attached to each other. It's harder to get rid of when the clay is leather hard, when you're attaching softer clay to leather hard clay. So I'm gonna show you a little trick. It's not so easy to do from the inside, but definitely easy to do from the outside. So I'm just gonna go around and smooth this in, and then I'll show you that trick. Smooth where they met together last. So a way to, besides just old-fashioned finger smoothing to get pieces nice and smooth, is going to be to, you can go in with the paddle. I support from the inside, although I'm not really at a paddle place, but I'm going to do it anyhow. You can use the rib. I don't know how people use dirty tools, so I just always clean it with a sponge and then make sure that it's dry, and just smear up from the bottom. I've mentioned it before, but I'll mention it again. Once you get this piece more off of the ground, off of your working surface, this process becomes easier. And as the piece becomes leather hard and you can handle it a little bit more, lifting up the piece to work on it is also another option. So now that I got rid of all of the smear marks from where I was making sure the two pieces of clay were compressed, then I can go back with the paddle and paddle out a lot of the flaws. So again, I just like to paddle lightly my top ledge just to give myself a flat rim. And then before moving on, I'm just gonna go around and pinch to kind of even things out. Now from here, after that coil, I'm just gonna add 3 or 4 more coils on top of this, and then I'm gonna do that step again. I'm gonna make sure they're compressed together really well, and I'm gonna make sure that I smear them so that they are attached really well, but I'm not going to do all of that paddling or refining until I have those 3 attached, as it becomes easier once you have more surface to work from. All right, so I'm gonna continue on in my next video with that.